right, folks, here we are for Biology 125. Dr. Jenkins here. This is going to be somewhat of a shorter chapter, but it's really no less important. For many people in the world, alcohol is a part of their diet, and it has very different effects on the body than the nutrients we've talked about. So let's just jump right in. So as I said, we're going to be talking about the differences between how the body handles alcohol versus how it handles nutrients. Because first of all, alcohol, it's not a nutrient. It's not a macronutrient. It's not a micronutrient. It's not something that we need for our body to function and live. Many of the effects that it has on the body are not good, especially when alcohol is taken in excess. So here are some true-false questions. At the end of the presentation, we'll get to see whether it's true or false. Is it a myth that women are more affected by alcohol? I don't know. Well, actually, I do know, but do you know? Passing out may be a good thing. It actually protects the body. What? Alcohol contains more calories than carbohydrates. What do you think about that? Are hard liquors more dangerous than wine and beer? And is it true that mixing drinks, liquor and wine or beer, is it true that mixing the drinks will give you a worse hangover or a hangover faster? All right, to be continued. Here's our outline. Off we go, folks. Okay, so alcohol, by definition, is a substance. Notice, it is not a nutrient. It is not something our body needs in order to function. It's a substance that contains either ethanol, methanol, and or isopropanol. The alcohol that we drink is ethanol. So we're really talking about ethanol. There's other forms of alcohol. There's rubbing alcohol. There's alcohol that's found in other substances that we don't put in our body. But the one that we do put in our body is the ethanol. So, substance that contains ethanol is what we think of as the drinking alcohol. So, as I said, ethanol is the type of alcohol that we find in the beverages that we may consume. It's not toxic in small amounts, so it's safe for consumption. But of course, if taken in extreme excess, it can be toxic. On the other hand, methanol and isopropanol are other forms of alcohol. I'm not going to ask you these. If you're interested, methanol is, for example, used in antifreeze. You don't want to drink that. And isopropanol is an alcohol that's found in rubbing alcohol, so it can be an antiseptic, but not to be drank. Something else that's unique about alcohol is it is fermented. Almost all types of alcohol are. Ethanol is made by this fermentation process. You should know the basics of fermentation. And it's not just alcohol that is fermented. Some people eat fermented food. I hope you do. It has actually some very good effects for our gut microbiome, which are those good bacteria in our gut. Things like kimchi, that's a fermented Korean cabbage dish. Things like pickles, they're fermented. So there's actually a lot of positive benefits to be said for some things that are fermented. Okay, but the alcohol type of fermentation. Here we ferment grains or fruit. So we ferment them, which means that we allow them to break down, and the yeast converts the natural sugars into ethanol. So there's a breakdown process. By adding the yeast help to ferment or break down these grains or these fruits into ethanol and carbon dioxide. It takes time too, so it's not something that can just happen overnight. Okay, so we're going to talk about some of the just please ignore that, I'm sorry. We're going to talk about some of the specifics Liquor takes that alcohol and it distills it. So most of the liquor that we think of, or the hard liquor, is distilled. So in a distillation process, I'm putting a star beside it. In a distilled process, we heat the ethanol. So it had to go through the fermentation first to form the ethanol, but then we take that ethanol and we heat it. And basically it causes some to vaporize, change from liquid to gas and vaporize away, leaving what's left as much more concentrated. You know that a liquor is much more concentrated than what's in wine or beer. It's through this heating or distillation process. So again, they have to go through the fermentation process first, and then they can be distilled or more concentrated. Okay. Alcohol is an organic substance, which means that it contains carbon. If you remember, we talked about vitamins and minerals. Vitamins are organic, minerals are not. Well, alcohol is also organic, so we have to take some care with it. It can be fragile in some instances, but it is not an essential nutrient. Okay. Are there any potential health benefits, though? Yeah, so, maybe you've heard the studies that have come out in the last 20, 30 years that say 1 glass of red wine a day can actually be healthful or healthy to your heart, particularly. So moderate alcohol consumption may increase your good cholesterol levels. It may reduce the risk of heart attacks. So it may be good for your heart health. I'm using the word may because there's a lot of stipulations to the research that we have found that shows this. Many sources say that these benefits have only been seen in older individuals. So I'm not going to ask you this, but it's an interesting thing. And of course, it only is with moderate alcohol intake and certain types of alcohol. Okay, so although there might be some benefits, there is, of course, much risk to be had. In most cases, any type of excessive or chronic alcohol ingestion has risks that far outweigh any benefit. I'm not saying a drink a week or a couple of glasses of wine a week. That may add more calories that you don't need, but I'm talking about a more consistent drinking routine or excessive drinking each time someone drinks. Okay, we mentioned serving sizes way back in, I believe it was chapter 2, and we talked about serving sizes of meat and fish. That was 3 ounces. We talked about, I think, pasta, cooked pasta, was it half cup, something like that? So I want to point out the serving sizes for alcohol because it's probably less than you might think. You should know the ones that have a star beside them. 1 serving size of wine is 5 ounces. Oftentimes you'll get a 5 or 6 ounce pour out at a restaurant. A 12 ounce beer. It's pretty easy to find a 16 ounce beer, a 24 ounce beer. And 1.5 ounces of liquor. If you're a bartender, each quarter ounce is a second. So if each quarter ounce pouring out of a bottle is a second, that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 seconds of pouring that liquor into the glass. In total, this adds up to being about a 1/2 ounce of pure ethanol. We need more beer to get to that 1/2 ounce because the beer is more dilute in its alcohol content. We don't need as much wine, and we certainly don't need as much hard liquor because the ethanol is much more concentrated. So 1 serving size of ethanol, pure alcohol, is a 1/2 ounce. In the drinks that we typically get, it would be these. Okay, maybe you've heard of proof. Make sure you can define it. We're talking only about liquor. Oh, just ignore that, please. Refers only to liquor. It's the amount of alcohol in that distilled liquor. It's basically a 50-50 proposition. Something that is said to be 100 proof has 50% alcohol, which is a lot, folks. Woo. If something is said to be 80 proof, it contains 40% alcohol. So you take whatever the proof is and divide by 2. Here are some of the examples of wine, beers, and example of a liquor. And it depends. Like if you, for example, when I went to college many years ago, it was reasonably close to Canada. So we would just take our spring break trips to Canada because you could drink when you were over 18, I think it was. And the beer in Canada had a higher proof than the beer in the United States. So we liked that. So it depends on the brand, the location, where you're getting it from, all those sorts of things. So as with the food that we eat, a lot of the typical drinks that we get tend to contain more than one serving size. So a standard beer is a 16-ounce beer, which is more than the 12 ounces. A standard Jack and Coke drink, for example, would contain 4 ounces of whiskey and the rest Coke. And that's actually 4 ounces is over 2.5 times at the half ounce, right? Okay. If alcohol isn't needed, it's not an essential nutrient, well, are there any guidelines for what we should be drinking or how much is safe to drink? The acceptable macronutrient distribution ranges, the AMDRs. They say that, and I quote, those who choose to drink should do so sensibly and in moderation. And they give an example of what moderation is. 1 drink per day for women, 2 drinks per day for men. I mean, it's really hard to give these recommendations because ideally, I suppose, no alcohol would be great. But if someone is going to drink, doing so in moderation is best. And that, according to the AMDRs, would be 1 drink per day for women, 2 drinks per day for men. And these are off of the serving sizes that we just defined. It also talks about some other guidelines. This is nothing shocking, right? No surprise here. Pregnant women should not be drinking. Children should not be drinking. If you have a certain medical condition or you're operating heavy machinery, you should not be drinking. Those who cannot restrict their intake should not be drinking. So these are pretty straightforward. Okay. So things to look out for. There should be an up arrow. Things to look out for. So I already said the size. So the standard size has a 1/2 ounce of the ethanol. But a lot of times the drinks that we get when we're out, or even if we buy beer, for example, it might be 16-ounce cans or bottles, we often have more than 1 serving. And also the frequency. So someone who doesn't drink Monday through Friday, but then totally gets plastered and does binge drinking, that doesn't even out to be moderation. Let's look at some nutrition facts, shall we? Of course we shall. So it is a fact that alcohol, the ethanol, does not provide any useful nutrient value. Sure, because it's fermented grains or fermented fruit, in the case of wine, you could say, well, there's some sugar in there. Well, there is. But I'm talking about a useful nutrient. We should be getting all of our sugars from foods. So there's not really any benefit to this alcohol. They often add additional calories. So even if you're drinking in moderation, these are calories that you're bringing in. Alcohol contains 7 kilocalories per gram. That's more than a regular carbohydrate, isn't it? A little bit less than fat, but more than a regular carbohydrate. So you have to add this to the calorie total, and it can quickly add up. Also, those who may drink more alcohol or more often or in higher quantities tend to, not always, but tend to have a poorer diet overall. So a lot of times the alcohol, the calories in the alcohol are taking over and displacing some of the calories that we would otherwise be getting from more healthy foods. So I would like you to kind of have an idea of the things I'm talking about here. I'm not going to ask you this number. Sorry about that. I'm not going to ask you that number, but the idea that the drinking of alcohol tends to add additional calories to the diet. Here are some examples. You don't have to know these, but you can see what's interesting about some of the servings. I already gave you the rum and Coke example down here. It actually, a 12-ounce rum and Coke contains 2.7 alcohol servings. Whew. Think about a mudslide. You get to these mixed drinks. Whew, 820 because you're adding cream in there. Whoa, a margarita? Well, that's kind of delicious, I think. But this is 3 alcohol servings. So the recommendations were 1 alcohol serving per day for women, 2 alcohol servings per day for men. So it quickly adds up. I'm not saying that drinking is necessarily bad, but these are things to all consider. Sugars, holy sugars. It's not just the alcohol. The alcohol is one thing, that contains sugar, but then we mix things with it. We mix with the rum and Coke. We mix the rum with Coke. It's got a lot of sugar, a lot of calories that we don't really need. A daiquiri, the example from the previous slide, right? Maybe not, no. But a daiquiri, they add that frozen fruit blend. Whew, sugar. Look at the red wine. One of the reasons why maybe of all the alcoholic beverages, why the red wine may be more heart healthy. Certainly the strawberry daiquiri is not heart healthy, but one serving of red wine a day doesn't have much sugar. That's good. And if you know anything about bartending or drinks, a lot of the drinks have simple sugar in it. Simple sugar is just water and sugar to sweeten it. We're still adding a lot of calories there. So these are just examples of what I already said, that a lot of times people who drink the alcohol in higher amounts, that alcohol, those calories displace what we would otherwise be eating and drinking to provide us with the calories and nutrients that we need. Okay. All right. Let's talk about some of the specifics. Here we go. I told you that alcohol is handled differently by the body compared to carbohydrates, fats, proteins, water, and vitamins and minerals. In fact, when alcohol enters the body, it is viewed as a toxin. It's not immediately toxic. So I'm not saying that 1 glass of red wine is immediately toxic to the body. But what I am saying is your body views it as something to be gotten rid of. You know, your body's going to welcome in, carbohydrates from vegetables, come on in. Come on in. Your body is going to view some of those delicious fats from even a hamburger or like the avocado, the protein. Your body's going to welcome in protein. Yes, give me more protein because I want to rebuild the muscles. But when it comes to alcohol, your body has the perspective of, you know what, that's not good. I want to get rid of it as quickly as possible. And in doing so, the body will actually stop some of what it's already doing. So because the body views it as a toxin to be gotten rid of, the body will kind of slow down some other normal healthy processes just so it can put more energy towards getting rid of the alcohol. And that's not a good thing. Same slide twice, just to get the point home. Okay, so what are some of the differences in how the body handles alcohol? Okay, these are 2 things that basically say the same thing. Alcohol, because it is lipid soluble, is able to rapidly enter cells, and as a result, it is absorbed very quickly. Absorbed much more quickly than some of our nutrients. So this is one reason why we can feel the effects of alcohol quickly, because it is absorbed more quickly. It also means that it can have the negative effects more quickly. Okay, so here is what happens when we bring in alcohol. Nothing is different from our nutrients at the beginning. We bring alcohol through the mouth, it travels down the pharynx, the esophagus, into the stomach. So these are the same thing as normal. But this is new. We have about 20% of that alcohol is absorbed into the bloodstream, because that's what absorption means here. Just ignore that. Thank you for playing along. We absorb 20% of that alcohol in the stomach. That is not true of carbohydrates, fat, and protein. We don't do any absorption, really, of carbohydrates, fat, and protein in the stomach. So here we go again. It's absorbed more quickly. It's absorbed in a different location. The remaining alcohol goes to the small intestine, where it is absorbed like nutrients. And once alcohol is in the bloodstream, like nutrients, not other nutrients, because it's not a nutrient, but like nutrients, travels to the liver. So really, the only thing that's different is here. About 20%. Have an idea of that number. About 20% of the alcohol we ingest is absorbed through the stomach into the bloodstream. Okay, this tells you some of the same information. Okay. Sometimes I just put a picture on here to make you laugh. Okay, here we go. Some of the other things that are unique about alcohol. Alcohol does not have to be broken down. This was true of some of the minerals we talked about. But folks, when we start to add all these things together, what it's telling us is that alcohol gets into our bloodstream very quickly. It doesn't have to be broken down, so that makes it faster. It rapidly enters cells because it's lipid soluble, that makes it faster. 20% of it is absorbed in the bloodstream through the stomach, well, that makes it faster. So all these things make alcohol absorption fast and easy. The specific enzyme that we need to help chemically absorb alcohol is alcohol dehydrogenase. I talked about enzymes before. When you see a suffix ase, amylase, lipase, protease, we tend to think an enzyme. So here, the enzymes in the bloodstream. So we're not talking about breakdown in the GI tract. We're talking about breakdown in the bloodstream. Alcohol dehydrogenase is the enzyme. And look, this process takes priority over other nutrients. Remember I said that the body views alcohol as a toxin, it's going to get rid of it, so it's going to put some other processes on hold because this becomes the priority. People ask me these questions over the semester, so sometimes I just put a slide in because I figure some of you are thinking these questions. So for example, why do some people get drunk faster than others? Or why do people get drunk faster on an empty stomach? If you don't have any food in the stomach, that removes even another barrier. Now, the alcohol can be absorbed more quickly. The stomach isn't busy doing anything else. So it's helpful to have food in the stomach because it slows down the metabolism of alcohol. And that allows the enzyme, alcohol dehydrogenase, to spend longer working on alcohol to appropriately get rid of it. Does alcohol affect women more than men? The answer is yes. It's not necessarily because a woman is a woman and a man is a man. It's because women produce less of the alcohol dehydrogenase. Women tend to be smaller in size, but not always. So this isn't necessarily always true. If we had a man and a woman, same age, same diet, same weight, same body mass distribution of lean versus fat mass. But one of the things that is different between men and women, in addition to some possible differences in size, is that women produce less of this enzyme that helps us metabolize it. All right, so we already talked about what was different about alcohol. About 20% of it is absorbed into the bloodstream through the stomach. The remaining 80% is absorbed into the bloodstream through the small intestine wall. And like nutrients, after being absorbed into the bloodstream, it travels to the liver. But the liver has an outsized role. The liver. This is where we metabolize alcohol. Nutrients get sent to other places where they will actually have a job in the body. Alcohol doesn't have a function in the body. So it's sent to the liver, and the liver's job is to metabolize it and get rid of it. Primary site of alcohol metabolism, with the idea being to get rid of it. So we've actually studied this, right? And we can say that the average liver is able to process or fully metabolize, keep up with metabolizing what's brought in, 0.5 ounces of ethanol per hour. This was equal to one drink. Wasn't one serving size of ethanol a half ounce? Well, isn't that helpful? Right? There's a reason why that's one serving size and why that's considered to be a moderate amount, because that's the amount of alcohol, ethanol, that our liver can metabolize and get rid of per hour. So if you were to only bring in a half ounce of ethanol per hour, your body would be able to metabolize it as quickly as it comes in, and you would likely not feel any side effects of the alcohol. Good. How does the liver do it? Well, we're not going to get that specific. That should be an up arrow. Basically, the liver is relying on the activity of this enzyme that we talked about, alcohol dehydrogenase. You don't need to know the specific steps, but I'm just saying at the liver, it is the action of alcohol dehydrogenase. Some of the effects of the liver having to metabolize this alcohol, we can get an accumulation of hydrogen ions, which can, lower the pH. My bad. That's not starred, but these two are. If the liver is busy processing alcohol, other important liver functions don't occur, right? So the metabolism of alcohol in the liver interrupts what the liver can do to burn other nutrients. And what can happen over time is you can get a fatty liver. I think I'm going to spell this right, cirrhosis. And we're going to talk, there's a slide on this shortly. But over time, if the liver continues to have to spend time metabolizing alcohol, and therefore it's not able to keep up with metabolizing carbohydrates and fats in particular, fatty acids will accumulate. Maybe you wonder, well, why is there a fatty liver in an alcoholic? Because of this. Because the liver is so busy metabolizing alcohol, it isn't able to do its normal job, which is to metabolize other nutrients. And what happens is, the liver's too busy metabolizing liver, it can't metabolize fatty acids as it normally would, and the fatty acids just simply accumulate. Okay, this is saying the same thing, interruption of other metabolic pathways, and we could see an accumulation of fatty acids. So the liver, as I said, stops doing other things. It may not stop completely, but its ability to do its other functions is severely limited because the alcohol is the priority. So, why would someone feel some physiological symptoms? Why would someone start to feel more laid back? Why would they start to feel happy? Or why would they start to feel a little drunk? Because the amount of alcohol that they ingest is greater than the amount of enzyme activity in their liver. Remember, if we bring in 0.5 ounces of ethanol per hour, That means if we bring in that much, we're able to get rid of. How much can we metabolize and get rid of each hour? 0.5 ounces of ethanol. So if you're balanced, if what I bring in is the same that I can get rid of, then there's no symptoms. And remember, 0.5 is what we can do. But what if I bring in more? What if I ingest 1.5 ounces, but I can only get rid of 0.5 ounces? Now we've got a tipped scale. So now I started with 1.5 ounces. I can only get rid of 0.5 in that same hour. So in that 1 hour time, now I've got an accumulation of 1.0 ounces alcohol. And because I've got an accumulation, it's going to stay in the bloodstream, and it's going to have an effect all over my body. So if you bring in any more than 0.5 ounces, now of course we all weigh different amounts, so a bigger person who has more mass can handle a little bit more, but this is a guideline, okay? And of course, that is the blood alcohol that we talk about. These are drinks per hour at the 1 serving size, and how it affects different weight individuals. I'm not going to ask you these tables, but they're there for your information. What are the effects of alcohol? Here are some of the effects. What I want to point out, alcohol is a depressant. I think some people make the mistake of thinking that alcohol is a stimulant. Cocaine is a stimulant, right? Amphetamines are stimulants. They increase central nervous system activity, but not alcohol. Alcohol has a depressive effect. So it reduces our ability to send nerve impulses. It reduces our ability to process information. Some people get confused because maybe when one particular person has alcohol, they feel happy. Maybe they do feel more energetic, but that just might be because they're at a party. The actual effects of alcohol, the ethanol, is a depressant. Over time, alcohol can lead to a chronic liver condition called cirrhosis, which we're going to talk about. And I talked about some of the other side effects. It may lead to poorer nutrition. It can disrupt all sorts of normal body processes. So I just listed a couple. So again, alcohol is a depressant. It inhibits our central nervous system, particularly the frontal lobe, which is responsible for our judgment and processing center. It will slow or disrupt our speech and vision. It reduces our motor control because it affects the cerebellum. Many people, again, think it's enough stimulant, but it is a depressant. What about passing out? This was one of the true-false questions I posed at the beginning. In extreme cases, the body will pass out. Make you unconscious, kind of. You're still living, still got a pulse, your heart's still pumping, you're alive, but it kind of passes you out. You know what? This is indeed a protective mechanism. If you bring in so much alcohol so quickly or through such a big quantity, your body will eventually shut itself down. It'll kind of make the decision for you. Because a person will keep drinking, even though they start to really feel the effects, they no longer become, let me say that again, they no longer have the judgment to be able to stop. So the body shuts it down for them. It's kind of like a last chance. I'm going to shut down because if I pass out, you're not going to be able to put another drink in your mouth. So it is a protective mechanism. Here are some progressive effects as the blood alcohol concentration goes up. You don't need to know these. I'm just giving you some information. Okay, so remember I said over time, fats can begin to accumulate in the liver. It can begin to accumulate a little bit even after one night of drinking, but we're not going to see these more serious effects until it's a more chronic situation. I want to mention the long-term effects, cirrhosis. Over time, we get a fatty liver because the liver is busy metabolizing alcohol and it can no longer keep up with its other job, which is to metabolize other nutrients, including fat. If the liver can't metabolize fat quickly enough, the fat just simply builds up. So much fat accumulates in cirrhosis that the fat begins to take over the liver tissue, therefore reducing the functioning liver tissue, making it even harder for the liver to get rid of the alcohol. Here's my public service announcement. It goes from a normal liver to a fatty liver to cirrhosis, which has fibrosis over time. Not good, folks. The liver is a very important organ. Okay, so alcohol, I guess I will have you know this. So we remember carbohydrates and protein. These numbers should begin to become old hat, I hope. Carbohydrates and protein yield 4 kilocalories energy per gram. Fat brought in 9 kilocalories of energy per gram. Well, alcohol we see kind of in the middle here. Alcohol brings in more energy. Well, we don't use it for energy. More kilocalories. Let me rephrase that. 7. But again, it's not something that can be used for energy. You can read about some of the other things. I'm not going to have you know this, but it's very true that alcohol can interfere with our body's ability to absorb and or use many other nutrients. One of the potentially dangerous side effects of this is something called Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome. Because of the alcohol, excessive alcohol, our body can no longer have enough thiamine, which is a mineral, a vitamin, and that vitamin deficiency can actually cause a more chronic brain dysfunction called Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome. Not good. Alcohol in pregnancy, it's not good. The only proven safe amount of alcohol a pregnant woman should ingest is none. Okay, I think we know that. Here's what the effects of alcohol can look like. All right. It can disrupt sleep, hormones. Congeners are compounds that are added to alcoholic beverages to add taste, but can contribute to hangover symptoms. I'm not going to ask you that, but there it is. Alcohol is a diuretic, makes you pee more because your body's trying to get rid of it. So it can cause dehydration and electrolyte imbalances. So why do we even have a hangover? Well, simply put, the body's trying to catch up. For that period of time that you were drinking excessively, or whatever the case may be, your liver was busy metabolizing the alcohol, not able to keep up with its other stuff, its other jobs. And then we had all these secondary side effects. So a hangover is just the body's attempt to try and catch up on metabolizing any alcohol that's still in the blood. The body's trying to catch up on doing its functions that were put on hold while that person was drinking. And then there's also some repair that has to happen. All right, here's some other examples. You don't need to know these. I basically went all out because I wanted to scare you a little bit with all the negative effects. All right, and there's more. Oh my goodness, you don't need to know these, but there's even more. All right. These are older statistics, but my guess would be that they haven't changed a whole lot. So really the alcohol use and abuse doesn't really lead to many good things when it's done in excess. I'm not going to ask you these stats, but usually excessive alcohol leads to other things that are not good. You can read about the consequences of binge drinking in college. Will lead to a lot of injuries, assaults and sexual assaults, deaths, not good. Here are our true and false to end this chapter. Is it a myth that women are affected more? No, that's actually true. Women are affected more by alcohol because they produce less alcohol dehydrogenase. Talked about that. Passing out may be a good thing. That's true. Remember, this is a way that the body can help to protect itself. Alcohol contains more kilocalories than carbohydrates. Yes, it does. 7 kilocalories per gram versus carbs. Hard liquors are more dangerous. That is not true. All the types of alcohol are equally dangerous, but it's just the amounts. Hard liquor is more concentrated, so it contains more alcohol per serving. But every half ounce of ethanol has the same effect on the body. It's just that hard liquor contains more ethanol. More mixing drinks gives a hangover faster than drinking only one type. No research has shown that. Maybe you've heard the saying, liquor before beer, you're in the clear. Liquor before beer, you're in the clear. Liquor before beer, you're in the clear. Liquor after beer, never been sicker. Something like that, I don't know. But really, it has everything to do with the amount, not the order that you drink it. All right, folks, another good chapter. I'll see you next time.